Hello, 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 greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of green across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my dear, marvelous, wonderful scholars, to the, and drum roll please, study. Hello there, hello there, hello there. Hello there, Firefly. Welcome. Hello there, FT Waste. Congratulations on getting first. Hello there, Lady Yumi. Welcome. Glad you could make it. Hello there, Julian20. Welcome, welcome. Hello there, Cool Skeleton. Welcome. Oh my goodness. And it's fine to be away from keyboard playing a game, Cool Skeleton. Glad you could be here. And hello there, Private Maverick. Welcome and congratulations on the 3-stream streak. Hello, 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 hello. Oh, Lady Yui. Horace, I love him already. Yes, this is Horace. He is my assistant, companion, roommate, all around wonderful helper. He is not a pet, as he has reminded me over and over and over and over and over and over again. I have apologized for it numerous times. I think he's forgiven me this time. Um, so then, my dear wonderful scholars, how are all of you this marvelous evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, whatever time it is across this vast, numerous omniverse? How are you all doing? What do you mean? What do you mean I'm laying a bit thick there, Horace? I'm just trying to be friendly. Private Maverick, I'm doing good. Good, 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 good. Firefly, I'm okay. Well, okay is okay. Yulin20, congratulations on the 3-stream streak as well. We're having a pattern here, it seems like. Oh. Hmm. But no, Horace, I'm not overdoing it. I mean, this is the way I am with them all the time. Of course it's fine. They like it. You like it, don't you, scholars? I mean, I'm not overdoing it. I mean, I'm being perfectly normal. Just my normal multiversal self. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. At least I think I'm being normal. I mean, what is normal for any of us? It is, of course, purely subjective. 20, of course, you are perfection. Naturally. I am. No, I can't say I'm always perfect because I'm not always perfect. Firefly, going to work on material for the cookie book while listening. Ooh, interesting. Really interesting. Cookies. Cookies are marvelous. I love cookies. I wish I had a cookie right now, but I don't. I can't get cookies right now. Lady Yumi, cookies. Yes, cookies. Yulene20, cookie book? I want a cookie. Well, we all want cookies, but unfortunately, books and cookies don't mix very well. I mean, you get crumbs in between the pages, and then you're turning, and if it's chocolate chip cookies, you get the chocolate on your fingers, and it gets smeared on the paper, and it's a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. Lady Yumi, snacks for later, my dude. I'm your dude? Huh. Interesting. But I digress, my dear scholars. Tonight, 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 it could be just any night. We are probably going to finish Kidnapped. It has been a long time coming. Yuli20, ah, yes, now I am dacing. Dacing. Oh, dancing. Oh, I see. Firefly, I wanted to try my hands at making a junk journal style recipe book, and I make a lot of cookies. It seemed a good fit. Oh, that sounds wonderful. That is amazing, Firefly. That is absolutely amazing. But yes, tonight we are finishing Kidnapped. At least I think we are, and I hope we are, because this book, my dear scholars, It is one of those books. I think it's the first book I've ever read in this channel where it's been more of a chore than I have ever imagined. Oh my goodness! And I'll finally not have to do a Scottish accent anymore. I'll be able to keep my voice clear. Oh my goodness. Oh, that'll be nice. That'll be nice. So kidnapped so far. Um, stuff is happening. David and Alan have finally reached essentially safety. Uh, David got sick. Alan borrowed some money from him while he was sick, but it was kind of in a sort of a shifty thing because David was so ill that he couldn't say no to what Alan was doing with getting the money. And Alan lost all of David's money, so David was kind of angry at him for a while, and then David got sicker and sicker and sicker, and he just kept thinking, "Well, I'm going to die, and that'll make Alan really sorry." But David, stopped having his little pity party, angry fit, and finally admitted to Alan how upset he was and he was going to die, and Alan got him help, thankfully. And then they reached the town they were looking for all this time. Only the problem is how to cross the river and actually get to the village itself out of safety because once they're in the village, they're no longer being wanted men. That's a long story in itself. We'll get into that later. Um, they managed to persuade a young lady to help them, and she rowed them across. So now I think that's where we left off. Which, again, it's been a while. We have 4 chapters to get through tonight, and I think all the chapters are fairly short. I think. I don't know. I'm going to read them anyway. Private Maverick, until the next book that has Scott. Yeah, that is true. That is true. Until that next time. So, my dear scholars, are you ready to dive back in to the tale of Kidnapped? And don't worry, if this is a short stream, I have some words to say about this book after it's done, so we'll have plenty of time to do some discussions. All right, my dear scholars, so sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage of your liking, dim the lights if you wish, and let us read Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. Julian 20 words. Yes, words. We will have words about this book. Excuse me. Chapter 27. I come to Mr. Rankeller. The next day it was agreed that Alan should fend for himself till sunset, but as soon as it began to grow dark he should lie in the fields by the roadside near to Newall's, and stir for naught until he heard me whistling. At first I proposed I should give him for a signal the bonny house of Airlie, which was a favourite of mine. But he objected that as the piece was very commonly known, any ploughman might whistle it by accident, and taught me instead a little fragment of a Highland air, which has run in my head from that day to this, and will likely run in my head when I lie dying. Every time it comes to me, it takes me off to that last day of my uncertainty, with Alan sitting up in the bottom of the den, whistling and beating the measure with a finger, and the grey of the dawn coming on his face. I was in the lawn street of Queensferry before the sun was up. It was a fairly built borough, the houses of good stone, many slanted. The town hall not so fine, I thought, as that of Peebles, nor yet the street so noble. But take it altogether, it put me to shame for my foul tatters. As the morning went on, the fires began to be kindled, and the windows to open, and the people to appear out of the houses, My concern and despondency grew even the blacker. I saw now that I had no grounds to stand upon and no clear proof of my rights, nor so much as of my own identity. If it was all a bubble, I was indeed sorely cheated and left in a sore pass. Even if things were as I conceived, it would in all likelihood take time to establish my contentions, and what time had I to spare with less than 3 shillings in my pocket, and a condemned hunted man upon my hands to ship out of the country? Truly, if my hope broke with me, it might come to the gallows yet for both of us. And as I continued to walk up and down, and saw people looking askance at me upon the street or out of windows, and nudging or speaking one to another with smiles, I began to take a fresh apprehension that it might be no easy matter even to come to speech to the lawyer, far less to convince him of my story. Sorry. For the life of me, I could not muster up the courage to address any of these reputable burghers. I thought shame even to speak with them in such a pickle of rags and dirt, and if I had asked for the house of such a man as Mr. Rankeller, I supposed they would have burst out laughing in my face. So I went up and down and through the street and down to the harbor side, like a dog that has lost its master, with a strange gnawing in my inwards, and every now and then a movement of despair. It grew to be high day at last, perhaps 9 in the forenoon, and I was worn with these wanderings, and chanced be to have stopped in front of a very good house on the landward side, a house with beautiful clear glass windows, flowering knots up on the sills, the walls new harled, and they have a note here saying new harled is newly rough cast, and a chase dog sitting yawning on the step like one that was at home. Well, I was even envying this dumb brute, when the door fell open and there issued forth a shrewd, ruddy, kindly, consequential man in a well-powdered wig and spectacles. I was in such a plight that no one set eyes on me once, but he looked at me again, and this gentleman, as it proved, was so much struck with my poor appearance, that he came straight up to me, and asked me what I did. I told him I was come to Queensferry on business, and taking heart of grade, asked him to direct me to the house of Mr. Rankeller. "Why," says he, "that is his house that I have just come out of, and for a rather singular chance I am that very man." "Then, sir," said I have begged the favour of an interview." "I do not know your name," said he, "nor yet your face." "My name is David Balfour," said I. "David Balfour," he repeated in rather a high tone like one surprised. "And where have you come from, Mr. David Balfour?" he asked, looking me pretty dryly in the face. "I have come from a great many strange places, sir," said I, "but I think it would be as well to tell you where and how in a more private manner." He seemed to muse a while, holding his lip in his hand. Holding his lip in his hand? How do you do that? Must be a pretty big lip. And looking now at me and now upon the causeway of the street. "Yes?" says he. "Oh! Oh! Thank you for the sub-gift, Wastes. That was quite kind of you." "Yes," says he. "That will be the best, no doubt." And he led me back with him into his house, cried out to someone whom I could not see that he would be engaged all morning, and brought me into a little dusty chamber full of books and documents. Here he sat down and bade me to be seated, though I thought he looked a little ruefully from his clean chair to my muddy rags. FT Waste, money starting to come back. Time to support friends again. That's so kind of you, Wastes. Thank you. Excuse me of my cough. A little bit of dust in here. And now, says he, if you have any business, pray be brief and come swiftly to the point. Nec gemino bellum tro genum auditur a ovu. Do you understand that? Says he with a keen look. I will even do as Horace says, sir. Horace? Horace? What did you have to do with this, Horace? How did you get there? Is that where you went when you said you were going out to buy the milk? My goodness, Horace, you really are an enigma wrapped up in a mystery. Kid Sean, you sent Horace for milk? It's a funny story, which I don't want to get into it. It involves, a very angry cow, some book squids, and for some reason, a spare tire. I won't go into it. It was a very, very stressful, very, very odd day. And also, hello there, Kintron. Welcome. Glad to see you here. I answered, smiling. And carry you in medias res. Firefly, but what's the milk for? Well, obviously you use milk for what you use milk for. I mean, that's why you buy milk, isn't it? He nodded as if he was well pleased, and indeed his scrap of Latin had been set to test me. For all that, and though I was somewhat encouraged, the blood came in my face when I added, I have some reason to believe myself some rights on the estate of Shaws. He got a paper out of a drawer and set it before him open. Well, said he. But I had shot my bolt and sat speechless. Come, come, Mr. Balfour, said he. You must continue. Where were you born? In Essendine, sir, said I, the year 1733, the 12th of March. He seemed to follow this statement in his paper book, but what that meant I knew not. Your father and mother, said he. My father was Alexander Balfour, schoolmaster of that place, said I, and my mother, Grace Pitero. I think her people came from Angus. Have you any papers proving your identity? Asked Mr. Rankcolor. No, sir, said I, but they are in the hands of Mr. Campbell, the minister, and could be readily produced. Mr. Campbell, too, would give me his word, and for that matter... Oh my goodness, give me 1 second, my dear scholars. Oh my goodness. Ah! Bad. Oh no, 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 no. Ah. 1 second. 1 second. I'll put you on intermission. No, no, no. No, no, no. Oh, oh, there we are. No, it's nothing serious, my dear scholars. As you as you know, it's not about the milk. You might not know this. I am, of course, using the handy dandy study system to broadcast to you out of this omniversal space, and I forgot to plug it in. So the battery started running down, and when I was panicking over was the fact that if I hadn't done plugged it in just then, I probably would have gone offline. And and of course, what's the first thing that happens when I try to plug it in? The entire plug-in setup kind of discombobulates. And so I was kind of scrambling, trying to reset it up. But here we are. We're all okay. I'm okay. You're okay. It was just me being a bit klutzy. Give me 1 second. I gotta get a drink of water. F2A says Sherlock once said, discombobulate. Yes, yes. I was completely discombobulated. Excuse me. Okay, where was I? I'll go from no, sir. Oh, thank you for the hydrate, Lady Yumi. We'll have another drink of water. Yeah, I was a little bit surprised. I forgot that I hadn't plugged it in. No, sir, said I. But they are in the hands of Mr. Campbell, the minister, and could be readily produced. Mr. Campbell, too, would give me his word, and for that matter, I do not think my uncle would deny me. Again, David has a horrible, horrible sense of character. Meaning Mr. Ebenezer Balfour? Says he. The same, said I. Whom you have seen? He asked. By whom I was received into his own house, I answered. Did you ever meet a man of the name of Horse Season? asked Mr. Rankeller. I did so, sir, for my sins, said I. For it was by his means and the procurement of my uncle that I was kidnapped within sight of this town, carried to sea and suffered shipwreck and 100 other hardships, and stand before you today in this poor accoutrement. Accoutrement. It's hard to say those words in a Scottish accent. You say you were shipwrecked, said Rankeller. Where was that? Off the south end of the Isle of Muir, said I. The name of the isle on which I was cast up is the island Ered. Ah, says he, smiling. You are deeper than me in the geography, but so far I may tell you this agrees pretty exactly with other informations that I hold. But you say you were kidnapped. In what sense? In the plain meaning of the word, sir, said I. I was on my way to your house when I was trepanned on board the brig, cruelly struck down, thrown below, and knew no more of anything till we were far at sea. I was destined for the plantations, a fate that in God's providence I have escaped. The brig was lost on June the 27th, says he, looking in his book, and we are now at August the 24th. Here is a considerable hiatus, Mr. Balfour, of near upon 2 months. It has already caused a vast amount of trouble to your friends, and I own I shall not be very well contented until it is set right. Indeed, sir, said I, these months are very easily filled up, but yet before I told my story, I would be glad to know that I was talking to a friend. This is to argue in a circle, said the lawyer. I cannot be convinced till I have heard you. I cannot be your friend till I am properly informed. If you were more trustful, it would be better befit your time of life. And you know, Mr. Balfour, we have a proverb in the country that evildoers are aye evildoers. You are not to forget, sir, said I, that I have already suffered by my trustfulness, and was shipped off to be a slave by the very man that, if I rightly understand, is your employer. All this while I had been gaining ground with Mr. Rankeller, and in proportion as I gained ground, gaining confidence. But at this sally, which I made with something of a smile myself, he fairly laughed aloud. "No, no," said he, "it is not so bad as that. Pfui, nom sum. I was indeed your uncle's man of business, but while you, it's hard to do this Latin, imberbis juvenis custode remoto, were gallivanting in the West, a good deal of water has run under the bridges, and if your ears did not sing, it was not for lack of being talked about. On the very day of your sea disaster, Mr. Campbell stalked into my office, demanding you from all the winds. I had never heard of your existence, but I had known your father, and from matters in my competence, to be touched upon hereafter, I was disposed to fear the worst. Mr. Ebenezer admitted having seen you, declared, what seemed improbable, that he had given you considerable sums, and that you had started for the continent of Europe, intending to fulfill your education, which was probable and praiseworthy. Interrogated how you had come to send no word to Mr. Campbell, he deportained that you had expressed a great desire to break with your past life. Further interrogated where you now were, protested ignorance, but believed you were in Leyden. That is a close sum of his replies. I am not exactly sure that anyone believed him," continued Mr. Rankeller, with a smile. "And in particular, he so much disrelished some expressions of mine, that in a word, he showed me to the door. We were then at a full stand, for whatever shrewd suspicions we might entertain, we had no shadow of prohibition. In the very article comes Captain Hoseason with the story of your drowning, whereupon all fell through, with no consequences but concern to Mr. Campbell, injury to my pocket, and another blot upon your uncle's character, which could very ill afford it. And now, Mr. Belfort," said he, "you'll understand the whole process of these matters, and can judge for yourself to what extent I may be trusted." Okay, whew, hard to speak. Indeed, he was more pedantic than I can represent him, and placed more scraps of Latin in his speech, but it was all uttered with a fine geniality of eye and manner which went far to conquer my distrust. Moreover, I could see he treated me as if I was myself beyond a doubt, so that first point of my identity seemed fully granted. "Sir," said I, "if I tell you my story, I must commit a friend's life to your discretion. Pass me your word that it shall be sacred, and for what touches myself, I would ask no better guarantee than just your face." He passed me his word very seriously. "But," said he, "these are rather alarming prolocutions, and if there are in your story any little jostles to the law, I would beg you to bear in mind that I am a lawyer, and pass lightly." Thereupon I told him my story from the first, he listening with his spectacles thrust up and his eyes closed, so that I sometimes feared he was asleep. I wouldn't blame him for a bit. But no such matter. He heard every word, as I found afterwards, with such quickness of hearing and precision of memory that often surprised me. Even strange outlandish Gaelic names, heard from that time only, he remembered and would remind me of years after. Yet when I called Alan Breck in full, we had an odd scene. The name of Alan had of course run through Scotland, with the news of the Appin murder and the offer of reward, and it had no sooner escaped me than the lawyer moved in his seat and opened his eyes. "I would name no unnecessary names, Mr. Balfour," said he, "above all of the Highlanders, many of whom are obnoxious to the law." Give me a second. Gotta get another trick. It's very hard to do this voice. Oh my goodness. Well, it might have been better not. It might have been better not, said I. But since I have let it slip, I may as well continue. Not at all, said Mr. Rankeller. I am somewhat dull of hearing, as you may have remarked, and I am far from sure I caught the name exactly. We'll call your friend, if you please, Mr. Thompson, that there may be no reflections, and in future I would take some such way with any Highlander that you may have to mention, dead or alive. By this I saw he must have heard the name all too clearly, and had already guessed I might be coming to the murder. If he chose to play this part of ignorance, it was no matter of mine. So I smiled, said it was no very Highland-sounding name, and consented. Through all the rest of my story, Allan was Mr. Thompson, which amused me the more, as it was a piece of policy after his own heart. James Stewart, in like manner, was mentioned under the style of Mr. Thompson's kinsman. Colin Campbell passed as a Mr. Glenn, and to Clooney, when I came to that part of my tale, I gave the name of Mr. Jameson, a Highland chief. It was truly the most open farce, and I wondered that the lawyer should care to keep it up. But after all, it was quite in the taste of that age, when there were two parties in the state, and quiet persons, with no very high opinions of their own, sought out every cranny to avoid offense to either. Oh! Thank you for the raid, Ike! Welcome, all you marvelous raiders! Oh, thank you for thank you for the hydrate, Wardud. Let's give a wonderful shout out to Ike. So Ike, what were you playing? What were you doing? Were you playing a game? Talking? What? Oh, thank you for the hydrate, Ike. Civ but Warhammer. Oh, sounds interesting. Sounds interesting. Well, welcome all you marvelous raiders. I am Matsu Quinox, interdimensional omniversal librarian. This is Horace, and I am getting another hydrate from Ike. Oh my goodness. We are in the middle of reading Kidnapped. And David is explaining the entire story to a lawyer who, oh my goodness, so many hydrates. Lady Yumi, why? I need to actually get back to reading the story. No, I gotta put a cooldown on that hydrate. I need to get back to the story. Come on, we're done. Come on. Let me get back to the story. I can't. I'm laughing too hard. I'm gonna choke. Oh my goodness. You're gonna make me choke on my water. Thank you for the posture check, Healy 20. Okay, let's get back to the story. Where am I? Well, well, said the lawyer when I had quite done. This is a great epic, a great odyssey of yours. I must tell it, sir, in a sound Latiny when your scholarship is riper. You must tell it, sir, in a sound Latiny when your scholarship is riper. On English, if you please. Though for my part I prefer the stronger tongue. You have roiled much, quae legio in terris. What parish in Scotland, to make a homely translation, has not been filled with your wanderings? You have shown, beside a singular aptitude for getting into false positions, and yes, upon the whole, for behaving well in them. This Mr. Thompson seems to me a gentleman of some choice qualities, though perhaps a trifle bloody-minded. It would please me none the worse if, with all his merits, he was sourced in the North Sea For the man, Mr. David, is a sore embarrassment. But ye are doubtless quite right to adhere to him. Indubitably, he adhered to you. It come, we may say, he was your true companion, not less paribus curis vestigia fidget. For I dare say you would both take an hora to thought upon the gallows. Well, well, these days are fortunately by, and I think, speaking humanly, that you are near the end of your troubles. As he thus moralized on my adventures, he looked upon me with so much humor and benignity that I could scarce contain my satisfaction. I have been so long wandering with lawless people and making my bed upon the hills and under the bare sky, that to sit once more in a clean covered house and to talk admirably with a gentleman in broadcloth seemed mighty elevations. Even as I thought so, my eyes fell on my unseemly tatters, and I was once more plunged in confusion. But the lawyer saw and understood me. He rose, called over the stair to lay another plate, for Mr. Balfour would stay to dinner, and led me into a bedroom in the upper part of the house. Here he set before me water, soap, and a comb, laid out some clothes that belonged to his son, and left me to my toilet. Left him. I know what the word means back then. I know exactly what the word means, but still, he left him to his toilet. That phrase has not aged well, my dear scholars. I'll tell you that. It's a very, yeah, yeah. Maybe we should continue and not think on it much further. Okay, I'm just checking a few things. Okay. Okay, let's continue. Chapter 28. I go in quest of my inheritance. I made what change I could in my appearance, and blithe was I to look in the glass and find the beggar man a thing of the past, and David Balfour come to life again. And yet I was ashamed of the change too, and above all of the borrowed clothes. When I had done, Mr. Rankeller caught me on the stair, made me his compliments, and had me again into the cabinet. "Sit ye down, Mr. David," said he, "and now that you are looking a little more like yourself, let me see if I can find you any news. You'll be wondering, no doubt, about your father and your uncle. To be sure, it's a singular tale, and the explanation is one that I blush to have offer you. For," says he, really with embarrassment, "the matter hinges on a love affair." Ooh, interesting. "Truly," said I cannot very well join that notion with my uncle." "But your uncle, Mr. David, was not always old," replied the lawyer. "And what may perhaps surprise you more, not always ugly." So, wow, that's a thing. What a thing to say. I mean, sure, his uncle didn't seem like a very nice-looking guy, but really, to say broadly that he was ugly? Oh my goodness. Really. "He had a fine gallant air. People stood in their doors to look after him, as he went by upon a metal horse. I have seen it with these eyes, and I ingenuously confess, not altogether without envy, for I was a plain lad myself, and a plain man's son. And in those days it was a case of audite qui bellos es sabel." "It sounds like a dream," said I. "Aye," said the lawyer. "That is how it is with youth and age. Nor was that all, but he had a spirit of his own that seemed to promise great things in the future. In 1715, what must he do but run away to join the rebels? It was your father that pursued him, found him in a ditch, and brought him back multum geniteum to the mirth of the whole county, of the whole country, of the whole country. However, majora cannabis, the two lads fell in love, and they with the same lady. Mr. Ebenezer, who was the admired and the beloved and the spoiled one, made no doubt, mighty certain of the victory, and when he found he had deceived himself, screamed like a peacock. The whole country heard of it. Now he lay sick at home, with his silly family standing round the bed in tears. Now he rode from public house to public house and shouted his sorrows into the lug of Tom, Dick, and Harry. Your father, Mr. David, was a kind gentleman, but he was weak, dolefully weak, took all this folly with a long countenance, and one day, by your leave, resigned the lady. She was no such fool, however. It's from her you must inherit your excellent good sense, and she refused to be banded from one to another. Both got upon their knees to her, and the upshot of the matter was that she showed both of them the door. That was in August, dear me, the same year I came from college. The scene must have been highly farcical. I thought myself it was a silly business, but I could not forget my father had a hand in it. Surely, sir, it had some note of tragedy, said I. What, no, sir, not at all, returned the lawyer, for tragedy implies some ponderable matter in dispute, some dignus vindas nodus, and this piece of work was all about the petulance of a young ass that had been spoiled and wanted nothing so much as to be tied up and soundly belted. Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Was that? I did not know that was in fashion back then. Huh. Interesting. However, that was not your father's view, and the end of it was that from concession to concession on your father's part, and from one height to another of squalling sentimental selfishness upon your uncle's, they came at last to drive a sort of bargain, from whose ill results you have recently been smarting. The one man took the lady, the other the estate. Now, Mr. David, they took a great deal of charity and generosity, but in this disputable state of life, I often think the happiest consequences seem to flow when a gentleman consults his lawyer, and takes all the law allows him. Anyhow, this piece of quinoxery on your father's part, as it was unjust in itself, has brought forth a monstrous family of injustices. Your father and mother lived and died poor folk. You were poorly reared, and in the meanwhile, what a time it has been for the tenants on the estate of Shords. And I might add, if it was a matter I cared much about, what a time for Mr. Ebenezer. And yet that is certainly the strangest part of it all, said I, that a man's nature should thus change. True, said Mr. Rankeller, and yet I imagined it was natural enough. He could not think that he had played a handsome part. Those who knew the story gave him the cold shoulder. Those who knew it not, seeing one brother disappear and the other succeed in the estate, raised a cry of murder, so that upon all sides he found himself evicted. Money was all he got by his bargain. Well, he came to think the more of money. He was selfish when he was young. He is selfish now that he is old. And the latter end of all these pretty manners and fine feelings you have seen for yourself. Well, sir, said I, and in all this, what is your position? What is your position? The estate is yours beyond a doubt, replied the lawyer. It matters nothing what your father signed. You are the heir of entail, but your uncle is a man to fight the indefensible, and it would be likely your identity that he would call in question. A lawsuit is always expensive, and a family lawsuit is always scandalous. Besides which, if any of your dealings with your friend Mr. Thompson were to come out, we might find we had burned our fingers. The kidnapping, to be sure, would be a court card upon our side if we could only prove it, but it may be difficult to prove, and my advice, upon the whole, is to make a very easy bargain with your uncle, perhaps even leaving him at Shaw's, where he has taken root for a quarter of a century, and contenting yourself in the meanwhile with a fair provision. I told him I was very willing to be easy, and that to carry family concerns before the public was a step from which I was naturally much averse. In the meantime, thinking to myself, I began to see the outlines of that scheme on which we afterwards acted. The great affair, I asked, is to bring home to him the kidnapping. Surely, said Mr. Rankeller, and if possible out of court. For mark you here, Mr. David, we could no doubt find some men of the Covenant who would swear to your accusation. But once they were in the box, we could no longer check their testimony, and some word of your friend Mr. Thompson must certainly crop out, which, from what you have let fall, I cannot think to be desirable. Well, sir, said I, here is my way of it, and I opened my plot to him. But this would seem to involve my meeting the man Thompson, says he when I had done. I think so, indeed, sir, said I. Dear doctor, cries he, rubbing his brow. Dear doctor, no, Mr. David. I'm afraid your scheme is inadmissible. I said nothing against your friend, Mr. Thompson. I know nothing against him, and if I did, mark this, David, it would be my duty to lay hands on him. No, I put it to you, is it wise to meet? He may have matters to his charge. He may not have told you all. His name may not be even Thompson, cries the lawyer, twinkling. For some of these fellows will pick up names by the roadside, as another would gather haws. You must be the judge, sir, said I. Better get another drink of water. Oh my goodness. I had forgotten how tough these Scottish accents are to do. But it was clear my plan had taken hold upon his fancy, for he kept musing to himself till we were called to dinner, in the company of Mrs. Rankeller, and that lady had scarce left us again to ourselves and a bottle of wine, ere he was back harping on my proposal. When and where was I to meet my friend, Mr. Thompson? Was I sure of Mr. T.'s discretion? Supposing we could catch the old fox tripping, would I consent to such, and such a term of an agreement? These and the like questions he kept asking at long intervals, while he thoughtfully rolled his wine upon his tongue. When I had answered all of them, seemingly to his contentment, he fell into a still deeper muse, even the claret being now forgotten. Then he got a sheet of paper and a pencil, and set to work writing, and weighing every word, and at last touched a bell, and had his clerk into the chamber. Torrance, said he, I must have this written out fair against tonight, and when it is done, you'll be so kind as to put on your hat and be ready to come along with this gentleman and me, for you will probably be wanted as a witness. What, sir? cried I as soon as the clerk was gone. Are you to venture it? Why, so it would appear, says he, filling his glass. But let us speak no more of business. The very sight of Torrance brings in my head a little droll matter of some years ago, when I had made a tryst with the poor oaf at the cross of Edinburgh. Each had gone his proper errand, and when it came 4 o'clock, Torrance had been taking a glass, and did not know his master, and I, who had forgotten my spectacles, was so blind without them that I give you my word I did not know my own clerk. And thereupon he laughed heartily. I said it was an odd chance, and smiled out of politeness. But what held me all the afternoon in wonder, He kept returning and dwelling on this story, and telling it again with fresh details and laughter, so that I began at last to be quite put out of countenance, and feel ashamed for my friend's folly. One moment, my dear scholars. Sorry about that. Had a little bit of a invader in here. Where was where was I? Towards the time I had Towards the time I had appointed with Alan, we set out from the house, Mr. Rainkeller and I arm and in arm. Lady Yumi, next time they pause, immediately hit the hydrate again. Oh, come on! Towards the time I had appointed with Alan, we set out from the house, Mr. Rainkeller and I arm in arm, and Torrance following behind with the deed in his pocket and a covered basket in his hand. Oh, of course you would ask for hydrate, Yumi. Okay, I'm running out of water. Where was I? All through the town the lawyer was bowing right and left, and continually being buttonholed by gentlemen on matters of burgh or private business, and I could see he was one greatly looked up to in the county. At last we were clear of the houses, and began to go along the side of the haven, and towards the Howe's Inn and the ferry pier, the scene of my misfortune. I could not look upon the place without emotion, recalling how many that had been there with me that day were now no more. Ransom taken, I could hope from the evil to come. Sean passed where I dared not follow him. 1 second, my dear scholar. Ovid just gave me some backup water. Sorry about that. Where was I? Sean passed where I dared not follow him, and the poor souls that had gone down with the brig in her last plunge. All these, and the brig herself, I had outlived, and come through these hardships and fearful perils without scathe. My only thoughts should have been of gratitude, and yet I could not behold the place without sorrow for others, and a chill of recollected fear. I was so thinking when, upon a sudden, Mr. Rankeller cried out, clapped his hands in his pockets, and began to laugh. "Why," he cries, "if this be not a farcical adventure, after all that I said, I've forgotten my glasses." At that, of course, I understood the purpose of his antidote, and knew that if he had left his spectacles at home, it had been done on purpose, so that he might have the benefit of Allan's help without the awkwardness of recognizing him. And indeed it was well thought upon, for now, supposing things to go the very worst, how could Rankeller swear to my friend's identity, or how he be made to bear damaging evidence against myself? For all that, he had been a long while of finding out his want, and had spoken to and recognized a good few persons as we came through the town, and I had little doubt myself that he saw reasonably well. Oh, this guy sounds very crafty. Very crafty. As soon as we were past the Hawes, where I recognized the landlord smoking his pipe in the door, and was amazed to see him look no older. That is a good question. How long has David been gone then? Seems like quite a long time. Mr. Rankeller changed the order of march, walking behind with Torrance and sending me forward in the manner of a scout. I went up the hill, whistling from time to time my Gaelic air, and at length I had the pleasure to hear it answered, and to see Alan rise from behind a bush. He was somewhat dashed in spirits, having passed a long day alone skulking in the country, and made but a poor meal in an alehouse near Dundas. But at the mere sight of my clothes he began to brighten up, and as soon as I had told him in what a forward state our matters were, and the part I looked to him to play in what remained, he sprained into a new man. And now let's hope I remember Alan's voice. "And that is a very good notion of yours," says he, "and I dare to say that you could lay your hands upon no better man to put it through than Alan Breck. It is not a thing, mark ye, that anyone could do, but takes a gentleman of penetration. But it sticks in my head your lawyer man will be somewhat wearying to see me," says Alan. Accordingly I cried and waved on Mr. Rankeller, who came up alone and presented to my friend, Mr. Thompson. "Mr. Thompson, I am pleased to meet you," said he, "but I have forgotten my glasses, and our friend Mr. David here," clapping me on the shoulder, "will tell you that I am a little better than blind, and that you must not be surprised if I pass you by tomorrow." This he said, thinking that Alan would be pleased, but the Highlandman's vanity was ready to startle a less matter than that. "Why, sir," says he stiffly, "I would say it mattered the less as we are met here for a particular end, to see justice done to Mr. Balfour, and by what I can see, not very likely to have much else in common. But I accept your apology, which was a very proper one to make." "And that is more than I could look for, Mr. Thompson," said Rankeller heartily. "And now, as you and I are the chief actors in this enterprise, I think we should come into a nice agreement. To which end I propose that you should lend me your arm, for, what with the dusk and the want of my glasses, I am not very clear as to the path. And as for ye, Mr. David, you'll find Torrance a pleasant kind of body to speak with. Oh, let me remind ye, it's quite needless he should hear more of your adventures or that of Mr. Thompson." Accordingly, these two went on ahead in very close talk, and Torrance and I brought up the rear. Night was quite come when we came in view of the house of Shaws. Tin had been gone some time. It was dark and mild, with a pleasant rustling wind in the southwest that covered the sound of our approach. And as we drew near, we saw no glimmer of light in any portion of the building. It seemed my uncle was already in bed, which was indeed the best thing for our arrangements. We made our last whispered consultations some 50 yards away, and then the lawyer and Torrance and I crept quietly up and crouched down beside the corner of the house. And as soon as we were in our places, Alan strode to the door without concealment and began to knock. Okay, get another little hydrate. Ooh, we're getting to, it seems like the plan is afoot, my dear scholars. Wonder what their plan actually is. Whatever it is, we're really near the end. 2 chapters left. Excuse me. Yeah. So I think we should just continue on. What say you, my dear scholars? Shall we continue on? Got very few pages left. It's a weird feeling coming to the end of a book. Lady Yumi, do you need a drink? No, I don't need a drink, Yumi. Kinchon, carry on. Yes, you sound thirsty. Lady Yumi, don't! Do not! No! All the no's! Chapter 29. I come into my kingdom. Thank you, Lady Yumi. For some time Alan volleyed upon the door, and his knocking only roused the echoes of the house and neighborhood. At last, however, I could hear the noise of a window gently thrust up, and knew that my uncle had come to his observatory. By what light there was, he could see Alan standing like a dark shadow on the steps. The three witnesses were hidden quite out of his view, so that there was nothing to alarm an honest man in his own house. For all that, he studied his visitor a while in silence, and when he spoke, his voice had a quiver of misgivings. It's been a while since I've done Ebenezer's voice.
What's this? Says he. This is na kind of time of night for decent folk, and I hae nae trokings wi' nighthawks. What brings ye here? I have a blunderbuss.
Trokings apparently means dealings.
Is that yourself, Mr. Balfour?
Returned Alan, stepping back and looking up into the darkness.
Have a care of that blunderbuss. They're nasty things to burst. What brings ye here? And what are ye?
Says my uncle angrily.
I have no manner of inclination to rout out my name to the countryside, said Alan. But what brings me here is another story, being more of your affairs than mine. And if you're sure it's what you would like, I'll set it to a tune and sing it to you. And what's it? asked my uncle.
David, says Alan.
What was that?
Cried my uncle in a mighty changed voice.
Shall I give ye the rest of the name then?
Said Alan. There was a pause, and then,
I'm thinking I'd better let ye in,
says my uncle doubtfully.
I dare say that,
said Alan.
But the point is, would I go? Now I would tell you what I am thinking. I am thinking that it is here upon this doorstep that we must confer upon this business, and it shall be here or nowhere at all, whatever. For I would have you to understand that I am as stiff-necked as yourself, and a gentleman of better family.
This change of note disconcerted Ebenezer. He was a little while digesting it, and then says he,
Well, well, what must be must,
and shut the window. But it took him a long time to get downstairs, and a still longer to undo the fastenings, repenting, I dare say, and taking with fresh claps of fear at every second step and every bolt and bar. At last, however, we heard the creak of the hinges, and it seemed my uncle slipped gingerly out, and, seeing that Alan had stepped back a pace or two, sat him down on the top doorstep with the blunderbuss ready in his hands.
And now,
says he,
mind I have my blunderbuss, and if ye take a step nearer, ye're as good as dead.
In a very civil speech, says Alan, to be sure.
Nay, says my uncle, but this is not a very chancy kind of proceeding, and I'm bound to be prepared. And now that we understand each other, ye can name your business.
Why, says Alan, you that a man of so much understanding will doubtless have perceived that I am a Highland gentleman. My name has no business in my story, but the county of my friends is no very far from the Isle of Mull, of which ye will have heard. It seems there was a ship lost in those parts, and the next day a gentleman of my family was seeking wreck wood for his fire on the sands, when he came upon a lad that was half drowned, where he brought him to, and he and some other gentlemen took and clapped him in an old ruined castle, where from that day to this he has been a great expense to my friends. My friends are a wee wild like, and not so particular upon the law as some that I could name, and finding that the lad owned some decent folk, it was your born nephew, Mr. Balfour, that asked me to give ye a bit of call,
and to confer upon the matter. And I may tell ye at the off go, unless we can agree upon some terms, ye are little likely to set eyes upon him. For my friends, added Allan simply, are no very well off. My uncle cleared his throat. I'm no very caring, says he. He was nae a good lad at the best of it, and I've nae call to interfere. Oh my goodness, he really is kind of scum. Aye, aye, said Allan. I see what you would be at, pretending you don't care to make the ransom smaller. Nay, said my uncle. It's the mere truth. I take nae manner of interest in the lad, and I pay nae ransom, and ye can make a kirk and a meal of him for what I care. Hoot, sir, says Allan. Blood's thicker than water, in the deil's name. You cannot desert your brother's son for the fair shame of it. And if you did, and it came to be Kenneth, you would ne'er be very popular in your countryside, or I'm more deceived. I'm not just very popular the way it is, returned Ebenezer. And I dinna see how it would come to be Kenneth, nor by me anyway, not yet by ye or your friends. So that's idle talk, my bucky, says he. Then it'll have to be David that tells it, said Allan. How's that? Says my uncle sharply. Eh, just this way, says Allan. My friends would doubtless keep your nephew as long as there were any likelihood of siller being made of it. But if there was none, and I am clearly of opinion they would let him gain where he pleased, and be damned to him. Aye, but I'm no very caring about that either, said my uncle. I would nae be muckle made up with that. I'm going to be honest, and that last paragraph that Allan said, I have no idea at all what that paragraph means. Even with the dialect, I could not tell you what it means. I was thinking that, said Allan. And what for why? Well, do you think? Oh my goodness. And what for why? Asked Ebenezer. Why, Mr. Balfour, replied Allan. But all that I could hear, there were two ways of it. Either you liked David and would pay to get him back, or else you had very good reasons for not wanting him, and would pay for us to keep him. It seems it's not the first. Well then, it's the second, and blithe am I to kin it. Oh, thank you for the raid, Jewelry Jelly. Welcome. Oh my goodness. Glad to have you here. Give a shout out. Oh, thank you for the subscription too. Oh my goodness. Let's give you a shout out. And just what did you happen to be playing tonight? Or doing, or what? There we are. Everyone, please follow Jewelry Jelly. She is fantastic. She is an amazing streamer. She is also a video game journalist, I think. Jewelry Jelly, I found a sweet little street snap game on Steam. Oh, sounds wonderful. Sounds amazing. I'm glad you're having fun with that. Thank you. And yes, please, my dear scholars, please do follow Jewelry Jelly. She's marvelous. We do have to collab at some point. Oh my goodness, I need to get another drink of water. Oh, in a way, I can't wait until I'm done with these voices. Where was I? It seems it's not the first. Well then, it's the second. Jewelry Jelly, every so often I break out the Princess Jellycat VTuber. Yes, I've met Princess Jellycat. She is quite delightful. I lost my train of thought. It seems it's not the first. Well, then it's the second, and blithe am I to ken it, for it should be a pretty penny in my pocket and the pockets of my friends.
I dinna follow ye there,
said my uncle. No, well, see here, you dinna want the lad back. Well, what do you want done with him, and how much will you pay? My uncle made no answer, but shifted uneasily on his seat. Come, sir, cried Allan, I would have ye to ken that I am a gentleman. I bear a king's name. I am nae rider to kick my shanks at your hall door. Either give me an answer in civility, and that out of hand, or by the top of Glencoe I will ram 3 feet of iron through your vitals.
Oh, hello there, Sophia. Welcome. I'm here. Sophia Ignace, I had a bad day. Read to me, Matsu. I'm sorry to hear that you had a bad day. We are on the second to last chapter of Kidnapped. We are just. Alan is giving Uncle Ebenezer a quick thrashing of words, and they are working on a plot against him. Sophia Ignace, let's go. All right, let's go. Jewelry Jelly, Strawberry Energy, Perunia. Yes, give all the Strawberry Energy, Jewelry Jelly. Delightful. Where was I?
Eh, man, cried my uncle, scrambling to his feet. Give me a minute, a minute. What's like wrong with ye? I'm just a plain man and nae dancing master, and I'm trying to be as civil as it's morally possible. As for that wild talk, it's fair disreputable. Vitals, say you, and where would I be with my blunderbuss? He snarled. Powder in your own heads are, but as the snare to the swallow against the bright steel in the hands of Allan, said the other. Before your jottering finger could find the trigger, the hilt would dare on your breastbone.
Hey, man, where's denying it? Said my uncle.
Pit it as you please, hain't your ain way. I do nothing to cross you. Just tell me what's like you'll Just tell me what like you'll be wanting, and you'll see what. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, this dialect's just impossible.
And you'll see what we'll can agree fine.
Truth, sir, said Allan.
I ask for nothing but plain dealing. In 2 words, do you want the lad killed or kept?
Us says, cried Ebenezer. Us says me, that's no kind of language.
Killed or kept? repeated Allan.
Oh, keep it, wailed my uncle. We'll have nae bloodshed, if you please.
Well, says Allan, as you please. That'll be the dearer.
The dearer? cries Ebenezer. Would ye fill your hands with crime?
Hoot, said Allan. The bed crime whatever, and the killing's easier and quicker and surer. Keeping the lad'll be a fashious job, a fashious kit of business.
I'd have him keep it, though, returned my uncle.
I never had nothing to do with onything morally wrong, and I'm no going to begin to pleasure a wild Highlandman.
You're unscrupulous, sneered Allan. I'm a man of principle, said Ebenezer simply, and if I have to pay for it, I'll have to pay for it. And besides, says he, ye forget the lad's my brother's son.
Well, said Allan, and now about the price. It's not very easy for me to set a name upon it. I would first have to ken some small matters. I would have to ken, for instance, what ye gave Hossin at the first off go.
Hossin?
cried my uncles, struck aback. What for? For kidnapping David.
It's a lie! It's a black lie!
cried my uncle. He was never kidnapped. He laid in his throat that told ye that. Kidnapped? He never was. That's no fault of mine, nor yet of yours, said Allan, nor yet of horse season's. If he's a man that can be trusted. What do ye mean? Cried Ebenezer. Did horse season tell ye? Lady Yumi, if Matsu coughs just one more time, I can't help it. Why, you donnering old runt. How else would I ken? Cried Allan. Horse season and me are partners. We gain shares. So ye can see for yourself what good ye can do laying. And I must plainly see ye drove a fool's bargain when ye let a man like the sailor man so far forward in your private matters. Excuse me. But that's past praying for, and ye must lie in your bed the way ye made it. And the point in hand is just this. What did ye pay him? Has he told ye himself? Asked my uncle. That's my concern, said Allan. Well, said my uncle, I dinna care what he said. He laid, and the solemn God's truth is this, that I gave him £20. But I'll be perfectly honest with ye. Forby that, he was to have the selling of the land in Carlini. Wilkin would be at as muckle mair, but no from my pocket, ye see. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. That will do exceedingly well, said the lawyer, stepping forward and mighty civilly. Good evening, Mr. Balfour, said he. And good evening, Uncle Ebenezer, said I. And it's a blown night, Mr. Balfour, added Taurus. Never a word said my uncle, neither black nor white, but just sat where he was on the top doorstep and stared upon us like a man turned to stone. Okay, I'll take a hydrate, Lady Yumi. I need a little bit of water anyway. What was I? Oh yeah. Stared upon us like a man turned to stone. Allan flinched away his blunderbuss, and the lawyer, taking him by the arm, plucked him up through the door from the doorstep, led him into the kitchen where we all followed, and set him down in a chair beside the hearth, where the fire was out and only a rust light burning. There we all looked upon him for a while, exulting greatly in our success, but yet with a sort of pity for the man's shame. Come, come, Mr. Ebenezer, said the lawyer, you must not be downhearted, for I promise you we shall make easy terms. In the meanwhile, give us the cellar key, and Torrance shall draw us a bottle of your father's wine in the honour of the events. Then turning to me and taking me by the hand, Mr. David, says he, I wish you all the joy in your good fortune, which I believe to be deserved. And then to Allan with a spice of drollery, Mr. Thompson, I pay you my compliment. It was most artfully conducted, but in one point you should outrun my comprehension. Did I understand your name to be James, or Charles, or is it George, perhaps? And why should it be any of the three, sir? Quoth Allan, drawing himself up like one who has smelt an offence. Only, sir, that you mention the king's name, replied Rankeller, and as there have never yet been a King Thompson, or his fame at least has never come to my way, adjudged you must refer to that you had in baptism. This was just the stab that Allan would feel keenest, and I am free to confess he took it very ill. Not a word would be answered, but stepped off to the far end of the kitchen, and sat down, and sulked. And it was not till I stepped after him, and gave my hand,
and thanked him by title as the chief spring of my success, that he began to smile a bit, and was at last prevailed upon to join our party. By that time we had the fire lighted and a bottle of wine uncorked. A good supper came out of the basket, to which Torrance and I and Allan set ourselves down, while the lawyer and my uncle passed into the next chamber to consult. They stayed there closeted about an hour, at the end of which period they had come to a good understanding, and my uncle and I set out hands to the agreements in a formal manner. By the terms of this, my uncle bound himself to satisfy Rankeller as to his intromissions, and to pay me 2 clear thirds of the yearly income of Shaw's. And so, the beggar in the ballad had come home, and when I lay down that night on the kitchen chests, I was a man of means, and had a name in the country. Allan and Torrance and Rankeller slept and snored on their hard beds. But for me, who had lain out under heaven, and upon dirt and stones, so many days and nights, and often with an empty belly, and in fear of death, this good change of my case unmanned me more than any of the former evil ones, and I lay till dawn, looking at the fire on the roof, and planning the future. Okay, we have one more chapter. I'm going to get one more drink in before we read this. Oh my goodness. Then maybe if we have maybe if we have time, I'll do a little talk about this book, because I do have some words about it and some things about it. So this will be the last one. Chapter 30. Goodbye. And here, this is interesting. The word goodbye in this is spelled Goodby. There's no E at the end of it. Kind of shows you how language has changed, hasn't it? So far as I was concerned, yeah. By the way, are you scholars ready for this final chapter? Are you ready for this? It has been a while coming. Helium 20 totally. So I'll say it again. Chapter 30. Goodbye. So far as I was concerned myself, I had come to port, but I had still Allan, to whom I was much beholden, on my hands, and I felt besides a heavy charge in the matter of the murder and I felt besides a heavy charge in the matter of the murder and James of the Glens. On both these heads I unbosomed to Rankeller the next morning, walking to and fro about 6 of the clock before the house of Shaw's, and with nothing in view but the fields and woods that had been my ancestors, and were now mine. Even as I spoke on these grave subjects, my eye would take a glad bit of a run over the prospect, and my heart jump with pride. About my clear duty to my friend, the lawyer had no doubt. I must help him out of the country at whatever risks. But in case of James, he was of a different mind. "Mr. Thompson," says he, "is one thing. Mr. Thompson's kinsman quite another. I know little of the facts, but I gather that a great noble, whom we will call, if you like, the D of A, Duke of Argyll, has some concern, and is even supposed to feel some animosity in the matter. The D of A is doubtless an excellent nobleman, but Mr. David, timeo que nocere Deus, if you interfere to bark his vengeance, should remember there is one way to shut your testimony out, and that is to put you in the dock. There you should be in the same pickle as Mr. Thompson's kinsman. You'll object that you are innocent. Well, but so is he. And to be tried for your life before a Highland journey on a Highland quarrel and with a Highland judge upon the bench would be a brief transition to the gallows." Now I made all these reasons before and found no very good reply to them.
so I put on all the simplicity I could. In that case, sir, said I would just have to be hanged, would I not? My dear boy, cries he, go in God's name and do what you think is right. It is a poor thought that at my time of life I should be advising you to choose the safe and shameful, and I take it back with an apology. Go and do your duty, and be hanged if you must like a gentleman. There are worse things in the world than to be hanged. Not many, sir, said I, smiling. Why, yes, sir, he cried, very many, and it'd be 10 times better for your uncle, to go no farther afield, if he were dangling decently upon a gibbet. Thereupon he turned into the house, still in a great fervour of mind, so that I saw I had pleased him heartily, and there he wrote me 2 letters, making his comments on them as he wrote. This, says he, is to my bankers, the British Linen Company, placing a credit to your name. Consult Mr. Thompson, he will know of ways, and you with his credit can supply the means. I trust you will be a good husband of your money, but in the affair of a friend like Mr. Thompson I would be even prodigal. Then for his kinsman there is no better way than that you should seek the advocate, tell him your tale, and offer testimony. Whether he may take it or not is quite another matter, and will turn on the day of A. Now that you may reach the Lord Advocate well recommended, I give you here a letter to a namesake of your own, the learned Mr. Bareford of Pilrig, a man whom I esteem. It will look better that you should be presented by one of your own name, and the Laird of Pilrig is much looked up to in the faculty, and stands well with Lord Advocate Grant. I would not trouble him, if I were you, with any particulars. And, do you know, I think it would be needless to refer to Mr. Thompson. Form yourself upon the lad, he is a good mortal. When you deal with advocates, be discreet, and in all these matters may the Lord guide you, Mr. David. Thereupon he took his farewell, and set out with Torrance for the ferry, while Alan and I turned our faces for the city of Edinburgh. As we went by the footpath and beside the gate-posts and the unfinished lodge, we kept looking back at the house of my fathers. It stood there, bare and great and smokeless, like a place not lived in. Only in one of the top windows there was the peak of a nightcap bobbing up and down and back and forward, like the head of a rabbit from a burrow. I had little welcome when I came, and less kindness when I stayed, but at least I was watched as I went away. Ellen and I went slowly forward upon our way, having little heart either to walk or speak. The same thought was uppermost in both, that we were near the time of our parting. Let me get one more drink of water. Oh my goodness. Where was I? Near the time of our parting, the remembrance of all the bygone days sat upon us sorely. We talked indeed of what should be done, and it was resolved that Alan should keep to the country, biding now here, now there, but coming once in the day to a particular place where I might be able to communicate with him, either in my own person or by messenger. In the meanwhile I was to seek out a lawyer who was an Appin Stewart, and a man therefore to be wholly trusted, and it should be his part to find a ship, and to arrange for Alan's safe embarkation. No sooner was this business done than the words seemed to leave us, and though I would seek to jest with Alan under the name of Mr. Thompson, and he with me on my new clothes and my estate, you could feel very well that we were nearer tears than laughter. We came the byway over the hill of Corstorphine, and when we got near to the place called Rest and Be Thankful, and looked down on Corstorphine bogs, and over to the city and the castle on the hill, we both stopped, for we both knew without a word said that we had come to where our ways parted.
Here he repeated to me once again what had been agreed upon between us: the address of the lawyer, the daily hour at which Allen might be found, and the signals that were to be made by any that came seeking him. Then I gave him what money I had, a guinea or two of Rankeller's, so that he should not starve in the meanwhile. And then we stood a space and looked over at Edinburgh in silence.
Well, goodbye,
Said Allen, and held out his left hand. Goodbye, said I, and gave the hand a little grasp, and went off down the hill. Neither one of us looked the other in the face, nor so long as he was in my view did I take one back glance at the friend I was leaving. But as I went on my way to the city, I felt so lost and lonesome that I could have found it in my heart to sit down by the dike and cry and weep like any baby. It was coming near noon when I passed in by the West Kirk and the grass marking to the streets of the capital. The huge height of the buildings, running up to 10 and 15 stories, the narrow arched entries that continually vomited passengers, the wear of the merchants in their windows, the hubbub and endless stir, the foul smells and the fine clothes, and 100 other particulars too small to mention, struck me into a kind of stupor of surprise, so that I let the crowd carry me to and fro. And all the time when I was thinking, yet all the time what I was thinking of was Allen at rest and be thankful. And all the time, although you would think I would not choose but be delighted with these bras and novelties, there was a cold gnawing at in my inside, like a remorse for something wrong. The hand of Providence brought me in my drifting to the very doors of the British Linen Company's bank. The end. That's a very odd ending, you know? Um, which makes sense when you know, yeah, really, really, Julian 20, which makes sense when you know that Cool Skeleton, end of story already? Yes. And that is because there is a sequel. Yes, there is a sequel to this book. Which, let me quick get the name of it because I completely forgot what the name is. And I think I once told someone and I got the name wrong. The name of the sequel is Catronia. And it was written in 1893. This one was written in 1886. Um, and I am not going to read Catronia. And you might ask, why would I not read Catronia? Well, Catronia, Julian 20, good. Catronia is a much less action packed, adventurous book. It's drier. It is exactly what you'd expect out of a romantic adventure story. It's less about the adventure and it's more emotional, and there's a lot of court scenes in it and a lot of laws in it, and the ending is not a particularly good one. Again. So about this book. When this book came out, critics were not impressed. In fact, critics reflected the same thing that later critics of the Disney adaptation of this movie, there was a Disney adaptation of this book, said about the same thing, that Kidnapped is okay, but it's no Treasure Island. And to be honest, having read it and as you heard it, I can understand why that is. I do thank Kinshan for donating me this book. Thank you for that. I very much appreciate it. Kidnapped, in my opinion, this is only my opinion. It really is not as good a book as it could be. Um, Kidron, glad the book squids didn't snack on it on its way. Yes, indeed, indeed, it survived. It survived. Um, One of the major problems with Kidnapped is the main character, David. To put it bluntly, David is kind of dumb. Most of the problems that happen in Kidnapped are of his own doing. Either because he trusts the wrong people, he makes the wrong judgments, or he just assumes the wrong things. He only got kidnapped because he trusted his uncle to not basically try kill him again. He trusts the wrong people on the ship, which nearly gets him killed. He makes assumptions of his state when he's on the island. He doesn't explore it, doesn't go any further. He makes assumptions on Alan's character, which ends up causing him more problems because Alan's probably his best bet to get through these situations. Throughout the book, David is naive, he's judgmental, and he's at times just plain an idiot. And when you contrast that with Jim in Treasure Island, yes, Jim is also naive, but Jim learns from his naivete and actually builds his character throughout this. Whereas David is kind of just led along by the events and spends most of the story in some kind of either feeling sorry for himself or just complaining about how he has to be around someone who obviously is who's a bit less than he is. David is not a great guy. Alan's interesting. I liked Alan. Alan is not perfect either, but his faults are much less. The one thing that he does wrong, which was to take David's money and lose it, Alan at least apologizes for it and does feel sorry. And it is David who actually holds the grudge against him longer, which I always thought interesting. Um, Overall, the book was okay. It wasn't as good as Treasure Island. It was okay. It had the problem also of starting very slowly, then building up to some excitement, and then going slow again, which was a weakness of this story, I think. On the whole, if I had to judge this by let's use Book Squids as a rating. Out of 5 book squids, I would give this book about at the least 2.5, at the most 3 book squids. It's a very flawed book, and I don't know if I would recommend it deeply to people who enjoyed Treasure Island, but for its faults, it's alright. It's nothing too offensive, nothing groan worthy. It's okay. Actually, I think this is my first book review for this channel. Maybe I should do that in future. Maybe after I read every book, I should give like a little rating. That might be interesting. Union 20. It was okay. It was mediocre. It was a mediocre story with a lot of flaws in it. So next week we are only going to have one stream. And I am torn between a choice of what to do for this stream. Because after this stream, I will be gone on a journey for about, say 10 days or so. So I will not be available. However, I have remembered you, my dear scholars, and we will talk about that next Tuesday, if everything goes according to plan. Cool Skeleton. Ah, I managed to finish my gaming session. Yeah, you just missed him, Cool Skeleton. But I will have the what's it called? I will have the on-demand video on the VOD ready tonight. So then, I haven't decided what we're gonna do for our next stream. I'm stuck between choices, so I will put up another poll, and I will let you scholars decide what we shall do. For now, though, let's see if there is anyone we can raid this fine evening. You know what? We haven't raided Mossmellow Bun in a while. Let's give her a raid. Looks like they're playing a game called Night in the Woods, which sounds interesting. Um, so then, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Till we meet each other again at the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, farewell and bye bye.